Prometheus by Lord Byron, 1788 to 1824. Titan, to whose immortal eyes the suffering of mortality, seen in their sad reality, were not as things that God despise, what was thy pity's recompense? A silent suffering and intense. The rock, the vulture, and the chain, all that the proud can feel of pain, the agony they do not show, the suffocating voice of woe, which speaks but in its loneliness, and then is jealous, lest the sky should have a listener, nor will sigh until its voice is echoless. Titan, to thee the strife was given between the suffering and the will, which torture where they cannot kill, and the inexorable heaven, and the deaf tyranny of fate, and the ruling principle of hate, which for its pleasure doth create the things it may annihilate. Refuse thee even the boon to die. The wretched gift eternity was thine, and thou hast borne it well. All that the thunderer wrung from thee was but the menace which flung back on him the torments of thy rack. The fate thou didst so well foresee, but would not to appease him tell, and in thy silence was his sentence, and in his soul a vain repentance, an evil dread so ill dissembled, that in his hand the lightnings trembled. Thy godlike crime was to be kind, to render with thy precepts less the sum of human wretchedness, and strengthen man with his own mind. But baffled as thou wert from high, still in thy patient energy, in the endurance and repulse of thine impenetrable spirit, which earth and heaven could not convulse, a mighty lesson we inherit. Thou art a symbol and a sign to mortals of their fate and force. Like thee, man is in part divine, a troubled stream from a pure source, and man in portions can foresee his own funereal destiny, his wretchedness and his existence, and his sad unallied existence, to which his spirit may oppose itself, and equal to all woes, and a firm will and a deep sense which even in torture can descry its own concentered recompense, triumphant where it dares defy, and making death a victory. Wow. Okay, this is a poem by Lord Byron, the Right Honourable Lord Byron. Let's see, Byron was born in England. He went to Harrow School, and then I think he went to Trinity College, Cambridge. His life was full of scandal and love affairs and goings on that were totally unacceptable to the society of the time, and eventually he had to go to Italy. He exiled himself to Italy. Anyway, when he's in his late 30s, he decides to go to Greece to fight for Greece against the Ottoman Empire, against the Turkish Empire. And he campaigns for Greece against the Ottoman Empire, and he gets a fever and he dies. And he died very early at the age of 36. He's one of the greatest romantic poets. So what's this about? Well, this poem is about Prometheus. And this poem is saying that Prometheus is a hero. Let's see. Prometheus stole fire from the gods, and Prometheus then gave fire to man, because Prometheus saw that man was suffering. And this is Byron's view of this, that Prometheus saw that man was suffering at the hands of the gods, at the hands of Zeus, who was a cruel dictator. And Prometheus gave fire to man. Prometheus was one of the Titans, and this was an act of rebellion. This was a major act of rebellion, and then Prometheus was punished by Zeus for doing this. He was chained to a rock, and I think a vulture or an eagle ate his liver every day, and then the liver grew again overnight, and the liver was eaten again the next day. Now, the liver in ancient times represented the seat of all emotions, so all of his emotions were eaten up. And Byron is saying that Prometheus was a hero. Prometheus was a rebel. He was rebelling against the tyranny of Zeus, the tyranny of the gods, and that this act of rebellion puts a crack in the system, in the status quo, and this is the beginning of the end for Zeus. This is the beginning of the end for the gods, and that Prometheus is giving his life, or giving his torture, his pain, for the sake of man. That Prometheus is a hero. And he is suffering for the good of man, and he's standing up to tyranny and oppression. And this is the way to do things. This is the heroic way of doing things. And like this, people do not need to suffer tyranny, that people need to be empowered, people need to do their own things. And in this, Prometheus has to choose between what is right, helping man, and what is easy, because if he hadn't given fire to man, then Prometheus's life would not have been a problem at all. And he chose to fight for the freedom of mortals. And he's acting on principles, and he understands the price that he's going to pay. But like this, Prometheus is suffering his punishment, and this is contrasted against the suffering that humanity of the suffering of humanity under the tyrannical hatred of Zeus, the sadism of Zeus. And like this, he can free, or help to free the human mind, because fire is the representation of advancement of science, but very often things that go too far. Science even gone wrong, but it's still worth it. Mary Shelley gave a title to Frankenstein about the modern Prometheus. So anyway, let's look at this. The poem itself, I think, is quite complex. Titan, to whose immortal eyes the suffering of mortality seen in their sad reality, were not as things that gods despise. So you saw the sufferings of humanity. You saw that humans were suffering, and this was something that the gods despised. That this is not something that was of any interest to the gods. And how were you repaid? What was the recompense for taking pity on humans? A suffering, a silent, intense suffering. So you decided to help humans do something you are taking pity on them. You're trying to reduce human suffering. And what is your recompense for that? You are chained to a rock, and there's this vulture that eats your liver. All that the proud can feel of pain. So you are going to feel intense pain, the agony they do not show, the suffocating sense of woe, and yes, you are there alone, chained to this rock, and there is this intense sorrow. It's very, very difficult, and it is difficult to understand this sense of pain and loneliness. And then is jealous lest the sky should have a listener, nor will sigh until its voice is echoless. So you're careful that maybe somebody above, one of the gods, is actually listening, and you don't make it a sound. You don't cry out, despite until you know that you won't be overheard. So you don't want the gods to know your suffering. Titan, to thee the strife was given between the suffering and the will. So you O Titan, you were given the problem of doing the right thing and suffering, helping humanity, or just taking the easy way. Which torture where they cannot kill. And your struggle, your problem is terrible. You are suffering a terrible form of torture for following what was right. And the inexorable heaven, and the deaf tyranny of fate, and the ruling principle of hate, which for its pleasure doth create the things it may annihilate. And the rule of heaven, the rule of the gods, the rule of Zeus is tyranny, is hate. And Zeus is creating humans just to be able to kill them. And this is not a way to live, creating things so that you can just kill them. And refused even the boon to die. And this Zeus, who's in charge of this world, he even refused your request to die. So you're not allowed to die. You've got to stay there eternally. The wretched gift, eternity, was thine. So now you're going to suffer forever because you gave fire to humans, and thou hast borne it well, and you've taken this punishment well. Yeah, you knew that you were going to be punished for giving fire to man. You knew you were going to be punished for helping man, but now you are bearing it as best you could. All that the thunder wrung from thee was but the menace which flung back on him the torments of thy rack. So all you actually got out of torturing Prometheus was reflected back at you. The torments which you gave him are something that have come back to you because his very act of defiance and being tortured for it has made Zeus look weak. This is the beginning of a revolution. This has cracked the basis of the on which his power stands, and this is itself is hurting Zeus. The fate thou didst so well foresee, but would not to appease him tell. And you saw what was going to happen to Zeus. You saw the end of the gods on Olympus, and you didn't tell him. You didn't tell him what you saw in the future, and your silence, and in thy silence was his sentence. Your silence would be the part of the end of Zeus, that this is the beginning of the end. If the Titans stand up and rebel against Zeus, this is the beginning of the end of the era. And in his soul a vain repentance, and evil dread so ill dissembled, that in his hand the lightnings trembled. And Zeus knew that something was wrong. He was sad that he had treated you like that. He repented, but the lightning bolts that he's going to throw, these were trembling because he knew that something was wrong. He wished he'd never punished you, because this was the beginning of something very frightening. Thy godlike crime was to be kind. So your crime was being kind to humanity. To render with thy precepts less the sum of human wretchedness, and strengthen man with his own mind. Now this bit is quite important. This is saying that Prometheus's crime was being kind. By example, you were decreasing the suffering of man and giving man his own ability to improve himself, to improve his mind. But baffled as thou wert from high, still in thy patient energy, in the endurance and repulse of thine impenetrable spirit. And yes, you were looking down on humanity, and you couldn't understand why they were being allowed to suffer like this. And through your patience, through your example, through your endurance, through your rebellion, this teaches human beings a lesson, which earth and heaven could not convulse, a mighty lesson we inherit. So you're teaching us the lesson of doing what is right as opposed to doing what is easy, and you suffering patiently in eternity for as your punishment for helping man. This is something that we can learn from as humans. Thou art a symbol and a sign to mortals and their fate and force. So you represent to humans the possibility to change our fate, to change what's going to happen to us. You show that we have the strength to change by rebelling against injustice. Like thee, man is in part divine, a troubled stream from a pure source. So humanity is like you, a titan. We come from the gods. There's part of God in each and every one of us, and we are an imperfect stream, imperfect water coming from the pure source, from a pure God. And man in portions can foresee his own funereal destiny, and man can partly see what is going to happen to him. He's able to see his fate, but his wretchedness and his resistance and his sad, unallied existence. So man can see all the terrible things that are going to happen to him unless he rises up, unless he rebels against injustice, as you have, Prometheus. Existence to which his spirit may oppose itself, and equal to all woes, and a firm will and a deep sense, which even in torture can descry its own concentered recompense. So we are all capable of resistance, and we can, the human spirit is able to see what it is suffering for. It's able to fight against this, and the human spirit is able to see why it is suffering in order to improve its life, triumphant where it dares defy, and making death a victory. And the act, but by the act of resistance, by resisting what is unfair, then even being put to death, even death becomes a victory. By fighting against injustice, by trying to improve human resilience, by improving human ability to look after itself, this helps the human cause, and this makes even death a victory. So, wow, it's quite a poem, this one. So Prometheus by Lord Byron.